We have said to the Department of War that we are okay with all use cases, basically 98 or 99% of the use cases they want to do, except for two. No one wants to be spied on by the US government. No one wants to be spied on by the US government.
I wanted to go back and re-examine the Anthropic versus the government, or at least the Department of War situation, in a little bit more detail, because since then they actually released an interview where they sat down and the CEO of Anthropic talked about it. And with the war we're having right now over there in Iran, I think it would shed some light onto what's actually going on and why was everything so important for the time period. Starting off with, the CEO of Anthropic was asked what are the reserves that they had, or the reservations they had, when it came to adding Anthropic into the military. And he basically said it was these two stipulations: mass surveillance and autonomous drones. Check it out.
That we're concerned about. One is domestic mass surveillance. There, we're worried that things may become possible with AI that weren't possible before. An example of this is something like taking data collected by private firms, having it bought by the government, and analyzing it in mass via AI. That actually isn't illegal. It was just never useful before the era of AI. So there's this way in which domestic mass surveillance is getting ahead of the law. The technology is advancing so fast that it's out of step with the law. That's case number one. Case number two is fully autonomous weapons. This is not the partially autonomous weapons that are used in Ukraine or could potentially be used in Taiwan today. This is the idea of making weapons that fire without any human involvement. Mm-hmm. Now, even those, I think that our adversaries may at some point have them, so perhaps they may at some point be needed for the defense of democracy. But we have some concerns about them. First, the AI systems of today are nowhere near reliable enough to make fully autonomous weapons. Anyone who's worked with AI models understands that there's a basic unpredictability to them that in a purely technical way we have not solved. And there's an oversight question too. If you have a large army of drones or robots that can operate without any human oversight, where there aren't human soldiers to make the decisions about who to target, who to shoot at, that presents concerns. And we need to have a conversation about how that's overseen. And we haven't had that conversation yet. And so we feel strongly that for those two use cases should not be allowed.
As you see there, he was saying that he was okay with 98% of everything, but just mass surveillance and drones were the only thing that was off the table for them. He brought up a good point about how the technology just isn't ready yet, especially with autonomous drones. Because, well, with autonomous drones, AI does hallucinate. It does make up stuff from here and there, but we need it to be 100% correct, or at least close to it, when letting it just decide who to take out, who's a target and who's not. Those are important questions. Also, oversight. Who is going to say what? Is it purely military using these AI models? Is it Congress? Is it the president? Or is it just the military people who are in action? So I think this brings into a good question, because we see that this actually led up into the bombing of Iran. Because, well, when it came to these things, they wanted them to make sure that Anthropic was on board by and with before literally Friday. And by that time, they were already deploying bombs over there to other countries, which is insane. And so that makes sense why it was a 3-day deadline, tight turnaround, was because of these things right here. Another thing that was noted in the interview was that the Pentagon did seem like they were okay with the two use cases, where it was like, hey, we will agree with the non-spying and non-autonomous drones, but the CEO of Anthropic actually shines a little bit more light in how the government was a little bit more slicker and trying to get around these stipulations. Check it out.
The Pentagon has told us that they have agreed in principle to these two restrictions, and they wanted to strike a deal. Why couldn't an agreement be reached?
So there were, there were kind of several stages of this, all done quickly and kind of all, determined by the kind of 3-day, the kind of very limited 3-day window that they gave us, right? They gave us an ultimatum to, to agree to their terms in 3 days, or be designated a supply chain risk or Defense Production Act. I guess we'll get to that later. But during that time, there were a few back and forths. At one point they sent us language that appeared on the surface to meet our terms, but it had all kinds of language like if the Pentagon deems it appropriate, or to do anything in line with laws. So it didn't actually concede in any meaningful way. And
As you see there, they did go back and forth, and basically we see that the government agreed, but also gave them ways out in order for them to use it however they wanted to. So even if they agreed to non-spying or non-autonomous drone use, well, they could still use it. Let's say the time calls for, if it's militarily necessary, or if some party in the government deems it necessary, which we know with how the government is moving now, anything can become deemed necessary depending on whatever political needs it seems like, or whatever policies needs to be done. So it seems like spying is a no-go, but if we need it, we will spy. And that seemed to be kind of an issue. The thing that was brought up that I think was really good was how they talked about the difference between an AI company and the rest of these other companies that support the military. They were talking about how there are other companies that support the military, and you don't see them have regulations over it, how these AI companies may have. Check it out.
So many other companies out there that do business with the US government. Boeing builds aircraft for the US military. Boeing doesn't tell the US military what to do with that aircraft. How is this any different?
Again, I would say 2 ways that it's different. One, I would point again to the newness of the technology, right? When a technology is well established, then there are lots of technical things about aircrafts. But I think a general has a pretty good understanding of like how an aircraft works. Like, aircrafts have been around for a long time.
But there's plenty of innovation inside the aerospace industry.
Sure, but not at the pace that we see with AI. AI is moving so fast. I've talked often about how AI is on an exponential trend. The models, the amount of computation that goes into the models doubles every 4 months. We have never seen anything like this pace of innovation.
But if that pace continues apace,
yes,
then the US government will never be caught up. So how does that logic apply if you have long argued that you want to work with the US government to provide, the appropriate national security? If it's going to be such a fast development for the foreseeable future, Congress can't catch up, then why turn your back on this?
I think there's only catching up once, right? So the pace of the technology is fast. The issues that arise are few, but very important. Again, we only have 2 of these: domestic mass surveillance, fully autonomous weapons. We need to have a conversation with Congress to help them understand some of the risks associated with it. Again, this is the most American thing in the world.
And in that scenario, we did see that Anthropic made a good point, where the lady asked about other companies don't prevent government from using their weapons or their technology, then why are you? And the response was pretty solid, I think, is because AI is very new and they are an AI company. Planes have been around for a while. Even though they may be a newish technology compared to cars, of course, they're still not AI. And AI has been moving, doubling, tripling in the past few months, if not years. It just became Sumer level in the last 2 years, which is freaking amazing. And also, they talked about other things. They also talked about how they're not necessarily against the autonomous drones or autonomous machinery that could be used to target people and take people out. They're more so opposed to it right now. They kind of feel like it could get to the point where you can use it, but it's just not there yet in this clip here. Check it out.
And so we are not, as I said, we are not categorically against fully autonomous weapons. We simply believe that the reliability is not there yet and that we need to have a conversation about oversight. And we have offered to work with the Department of War to help develop these technologies, to prototype them in a sandbox. But they weren't interested in this unless they could do whatever they want right from the beginning.
Also, I think that clip was interesting, but there was also some talks around how the government is saying that they could adhere to the laws because they can't get around the laws. It's the government. I'm saying they're going to follow the law, going to follow the rules. And I like how in this clip here, the CEO of Anthropic says that there are ways to get around it by like piecing information together in order for these things to happen. Check it out.
Give me one or two examples of what could go wrong.
So the kind of thing that there are two classes of things that I could imagine could go wrong. One, again, is around this idea of reliability, which is just it targets the wrong person, it shoots a civilian, it doesn't show the judgment that a human soldier would show. Friendly fire or shooting a civilian or just the wrong kind of things. We don't want to sell something that we don't think is reliable, and we don't want to sell something that could get our own people killed or that could get innocent people killed. Second is this question of oversight. If you think about it, you human soldiers, there's a whole chain of accountability that assumes a human uses their common sense. Suppose I have an army of 10 million drones all coordinated by one person or a small set of people. I think it's easy to see that there are accountability issues there, right? That concentrating power that much doesn't work. It doesn't mean we shouldn't have this fleet. Again, I don't know, maybe we need it at some point because our adversaries will have it. But we need to have a conversation about accountability, about who is holding the button and who can say no. And I think that's very reasonable.
As you see there, that the government could get around the law by using technology where the laws haven't necessarily caught up to the technology. The government could use AI to get around these type of safe rails or safeguards that the laws have. And we don't know how long that's going to take. We do see things like people de-anonymizing the internet by making certain companies and websites ask for IDs so that people have to enter in their IDs in order to access different websites, or if they think that you're a child, which is of course not only happening for children, it's happening for adults too, because that's just how the internet works. So we could see how a lot of this could be used in nefarious ways. We also know government doesn't always act in the people's best interests. Even if it's in good faith, we also know that it's not always in good faith. Also, in the interview, they talked about the political party of Anthropic, which I thought was very interesting here. Check it out.
President Trump has called Anthropic a left-wing woke company. Is this decision at all driven by ideology?
Look, we I think have tried to be very neutral. We speak up on issues of AI policy where we have expertise. We don't have views. We don't think about general political issues. Disagreeing with the government is the most American thing in the world. And we are patriots. In everything we have done here, we have stood up for the values of this country.
About where do they think they're a leftist company or whatever? Anthropic said they try to say neutral. But I thought that was interesting because we seen even like a week or two ago where Anthropic literally was calling out a lot of these Chinese models that are basically distilling down Anthropic's Opus or Claude models to make their models better, and which was kind of debunked for the most part, as well as we've seen Anthropic really play hardball with it comes to Chinese models, Chinese companies. So to say that they're leftist really doesn't show when it comes to how they're moving politically. And with everything happening right now with Iran, you see how they may have been trying to use this technology sooner rather than later. But tell me what you think in the comments down below. If you like this video, definitely subscribe. With that being said, your boy Dex, not Dexter, out.